It is early in the morning for me, just a little after 6 a.m. My name is Rhonda. I'm with the Canadian People's Union and a PowerShift coordinator for English Canada. I do not know French. I'm pretty handy with Google Translate, and that's the extent of my French. So anytime I do a video, I try to do it in a way that once the live has finished, there will be closed captioning in the language of your choice. So today, this is going to be a live feed that is going on Facebook and YouTube. And both of those should have closed captioning once the live is over and the video has been viewed a few times. It takes a bit for the closed captioning to replicate, but it will be there. So welcome. Thank you for showing up and viewing. And I am, just one second. And I am basically, I can see your comments in the app that I'm using to play the video or to do this video. So I was going to play a video this morning, but I decided it's just going to be a fairly short call to action today, and then a little bit of discussion around some new information that came out this weekend that Nicole was talking about yesterday, and we started to talk about on Friday. And what we can do with that information, because it can be very overwhelming. All of this new information, all of this new stuff that we're finding out, it's overwhelming. And I know myself, the way I deal with this best is to keep it in small, manageable pieces, moving along so that I don't stay in one spot with one belief system. But just so that we can keep moving along and not get into a sense of overwhelm or the sense that we can do nothing or that nothing we don't do matters, because it does. So to base what I started on Friday, every voice in this matters. In Canada, we have a political system that we have what's called parliamentary democracy. We don't necessarily have political democracy for us, the citizens of Canada. Our only democratic right for our political rights, in how our country politics is structured, is to either vote or to run in elections. That's it. And if you're not part of that political process, if you're not a politician, if you're not one of they call them actors in the Elections Act, interestingly enough, if you're not one of those, you are a bystander. So as a bystander, though, we do have rights, and our Constitution is one of those rights. The interesting thing about our Constitution is we're actually not in it. Did you know that? We're not in our own Constitution. In America, in the US, the people are in their Constitution. In many other countries, the people are in their constitutions. In Canada, we're not. We have representatives that are supposed to work in our best interest in the Constitution, but ourselves with collective rights, collective political and civil rights, are not in the Constitution. We only have individual rights that have been granted to us. They're called entrenched rights. They're not inherent. They're called entrenched rights. And I use quotes because entrenched in our Charter of Rights and in pieces of our Constitution. However, those can be changed at any time without our consent. They don't even need to tell us. And that's what's happening. And that's why we are doing these calls to action. If history has shown us anything, it's once a freedom has been taken away by a government, any government in any country, it is almost impossible to get it back without bloodshed. And we don't want that. I certainly don't want that. I don't want my child to have to go through that. And it's a crappy topic for a Monday morning, but it needs to be said. It's so much easier to put the effort in to keep what you have and to grow what you already have than it is to do nothing and then try to get it back. So what do we already have in Canada? Well, we have the right to our health privacy. Our privacy, our health issues, our own health, our own individual health in Canada, like my health. If I don't choose to disclose any of my health information public, that's my choice. I don't need to. The only people I need to disclose my health issues with are my doctors and caregivers should I need to go into a hospital. That's it. My employers don't get to know. My spouse doesn't even need, oh no, not that I have a spouse, but if I had a spouse, even they wouldn't have to know. Legally, there's no reason for them to know. It's my right, my health, my choice. Choice is another thing we have with our health. The right not to be discriminated against for the choices we make, regardless of our religion, orientation, anything personal that's our choice, it's our choice to make. And it cannot be discriminated against. As long as it's not infringing directly on the right of another person, we're fine. And this is where this play on words has come in with what we're seeing happening today. And it's been a slow progress, and we've been conditioned. I don't know if people realize this, but we've actually been conditioned over, I would say, the last 10 years to this way of thinking. It is, it's not a wonderful thing to be this conditioned. However, it's what's happened, and we've been conditioned through the media. We've been conditioned through how our politicians speak. We've been conditioned through wording used whenever certain things pop up. And the conditioning that we've had the most of is this idea that somehow I need to give up my right in order so someone else has their right. I don't really quite know how to explain this in a way that's clearer than that. But it's nobody's responsibility to look after my health except for me. And it's not my neighbor's responsibility to look after my health. That's me. The only people that are supposed to be looking after the health of others are caregivers in healthcare settings. That's it. And if you have a family member that has extreme health issues, well, of course you're going to do everything in your power to keep them safe. But that's it. You keep yourself safe, and by keeping yourself safe, you keep others safe. And your choices do not infringe on theirs, and their choices do not infringe on you. That's called society, and that's called community, and you help each other. But for some reason, we've been conditioned to think that we are somehow responsible for the lives of everybody around us. And if we don't do what the government tells us to do, we are putting everybody's life at risk. Our children are growing up with this belief system that if they don't do what the government tells them, they're murderers. And they're going to kill grandma and grandpa, and they're going to kill their neighbor who needs help. It's just bizarre. And I keep using this word bizarre, and I'm trying to find other words to use. But to me, that's exactly what it is. It's like we're in 1984. If you've ever read the book 1984, it's common sense, critical thinking, logic, and the ability to work as a community have disappeared. And that is scary. We should be having discussions around the pros and the cons of all of this as parents, as community members, as people who care about each other, because not everybody can do the same thing. It's unheard of what's happening right now. This has never been done in the history of the world before. Well, you know what? Except for one case, and whenever you bring it up, it's touted as being so horrible. But in Europe, this was done in Europe in the early 1900s, and it was not good. The outcome was not good. And we have communist regimes to this day because of it. So what we need to do is look in the mirror every morning. That's the only person that can help you. If you pray to a God, that's great. But you know what? God sends messages, at least my God does. Sends messages to, like, gives you signs. You know, the universe gives you, I call it the universe. The universe gives you signs that you're on the right track, or that you need to adjust, that it's all about these little things that show up in your life. And if you ignore those signs waiting to be rescued, you're going to sink. And there are plenty of stories in every religion around this. You need to help yourselves. And who needs to help you is the person who looks back in the mirror every day. Who needs to help your family is the person that looks back in the mirror every day. And how do we do this? Well, right now, the first call to action, we have a pinned post on our Facebook page, and we have under the home button, or the word home on our website. If you just sort of hover on that, a drop-down list will come down, and there are letters on there to David Lametti, both in French and English. Inside that link are other links to other PDFs. And I know it's kind of convoluted, and we're working on getting the webpage fixed so that it's easier to, like, the navigation on the webpage fixed, so it's a lot easier to find things. In the meantime, if you're on Facebook, it's on the pinned post at the very top of the Facebook. It is the letter to businesses. It's one page. There are links on there that people can type in to get to additional information. And there is a French letter and an English letter, so you don't need to worry about language. And they're PDFs you can download and email. You can print. It doesn't need to be in color. It can be black and white. If you're like me and you choose to use Staples, you can download the PDF and then send it through your Staples print account and just go in and pick them up. When you're out and about, hand them out. If I live in a province with no restrictions anymore. There's everything's kind of been lifted. I think that the only restriction we have still is on size of gatherings, but there's no more mask mandates. There's no more really anything in my province. I'm fairly lucky that way. My province has actually been one of the least lockdown provinces in Canada. So it's been very interesting. It's also, interestingly enough, one of the provinces that has had the highest uptake for the injections. And that's because I also live in one of the provinces with the highest number of seniors. So and that's who everything should be aimed at right now, are seniors and those with extreme healthcare issues. That's all that should have happened with this. Why healthy people who have been exposed already and already have antibodies need injections has never been proven in science before when it comes to immunity. That's sort of, if you go through history and read vaccine history and all of that, it's, if you've already caught it, you don't get vaccinated for it. There's another, especially for certain viruses. I'm not talking like, there's things, everybody keeps lumping everything together when they're having discussions, and it's very different. There's you have to really look at what each does. Now, the viruses that we're talking about that have become an integral part of our lives in the last year and a half are coronaviruses. And they tend to operate very similar. They've actually been around for decades, like decades. And they live in animals, like our cats, our dogs, our horses, our pigs, our cows. The vet world has been dealing with these viruses for decades, longer than we have been as humans. The flu viruses, cold viruses, and we had a SARS scare in the early 2000s. Now we're having a second one now. And we're having all these different variants come out. We have to come to terms with, this is something that's never going away. It is a type of virus that you'll never be able to eradicate. So what do you do? For decades, the flu, which is a version of this, not this particular one, but another corona type of a virus, it ravished the world for decades. Every flu season for decades, over 600,000 people worldwide perished. It wasn't seen as a large number. There was no concern. It was only dangerous to the very old who had health issues, or other people that had health issues, or the very young. This new version that is out now, with all these new variants, very similar, with the exception of it's not dangerous to the very young. Like, not life-threatening. They tend to, if they're healthy, they tend to get over it pretty quickly. And that there's always exceptions to that. So one of the things as well, with this being almost to the point where it's coercion and forced, where's the other side of this? Start asking your MPs and your MLAs, if I choose to get vaccinated or have these injections, I have to watch our language because they're not vaccines, they're injections. So if I choose to have this injection and it causes, and I have a severe reaction or a severe adverse effect that affects my life forever, am I going to be compensated, or am I just going to be left alone to struggle on my own to find a way to make ends meet when I can't work, and to find a way to, do I have to go on welfare? Am I even going to qualify for welfare? Is it, why do I have to go on welfare when I've had a decent life ahead of time, like before that? And I was sort of coerced and manipulated into getting this. If they can't sign a waiver saying that you will be 100% looked after should something occur, why is that? Pharmaceutical companies are making billions, like multi-billions. In the last year and a half, there have been more billionaires born because of healthcare than at any point in history. Why is that money not being set aside for adverse effects? Why are they not culpable for those? Why is that? No one seems to be having that discussion. Why is that? So back to the letter. The letter, again, is about our rights. It's about our individual rights. We're using our collective rights. Big difference. We're using our collective rights to get the message out. So we're using our individual voices collectively with the same message so that it saturates, so that people begin to notice. If you keep changing things up too much, if you keep thinking that, oh, go look over here, they're doing it, just follow them. Go over there. Why are you not following them? You end up losing your message. Keep at it, people. You're doing a great job. I tell you, yesterday we shared a video on Facebook that happened in Quebec. Again, I don't know a lick of French. However, it wasn't hard to understand the body language, the tone of voice, what was going on. You didn't need to know the language to understand. So they were in a shopping mall, in a grocery store, and then they were in a group, and then these ladies held up these letters, and they were our letters. I was like, oh my goodness. I got teary because they are making a difference. They are working together. They're doing exactly what needs to happen. They were in a group, so they couldn't be targeted. They were handing the letters out to all the stores, as well as there were security guards everywhere, because there's security guards in large cities. There's security guards everywhere now in the malls. So they were handing all of those out. It was just awesome to see. That just warms. It makes us feel like what we're doing is people are actually taking note, and it's making a big difference. Now, you don't need to go public with it either. We don't want people to feel that if they can't go public with it, they can't do it. The thing about legal civil disobedience is the fact that every tiny part matters, and it's all the sum parts of a big whole. And that's what this is about. It's about everybody doing what they can in their own sphere of influence, like your own little circle of influence, doing what you can that is the similar message. And then, it's kind of like that pay it forward, that you tell two friends and they'll pay it forward to two friends, and they pay it forward to two friends. This is how movements grow. And I have to tell you, the PowerShift is a movement. The Canadian People's Union is a movement. The Canadian People's Union is actually a registered nonprofit organization. It is a legal entity. It created the PowerShift, that entity, the Canadian People's Union, created the PowerShift for all of us to use, for all of us to be a part of, for us to get our collective civil and political rights where they belong, with us. We have been told for hundreds of years, literally, over 150 years, that we own Canada, that the Canada belongs to the people. It does. We're just not on any documents that prove it, or in a way that shows us as being the owners of our country. The PowerShift is going to change that. That's what that's about. It's about changing our Constitution to place us as the final decision, us collectively, not just one person, collectively, all of us as the final decision makers over our governments, so that our governments can do their jobs. Those that we elect can do their jobs. They can go about doing their jobs. However, we can have referendums that we decide when there needs to be a referendum. We can have referendums around decisions that are made. We can directly, the Senate has more clout. The Governor General has more clout. There's a lot of areas that were built inside our political system that were meant to work on our behalf. And they have, over the years, they've just been usurped by the cabinet ministers and the prime minister. And as a result, our governance is now totalitarian and very dictatorship, because legally, because we're not in our constitution for how our country is governed, we give our right to self-determination, which is a international right. We give that to those we elect every 4 years. Now, do we give all of it to them? Does it stay with them completely? Do we have no voice in between elections? No. But we give them the right to decide for us inside of Parliament. And we don't give it to them. We give it to the political party that they are with. That's something that a lot of people don't understand. I didn't understand it for years and years and years as a voter. I've always been a policy voter. So I didn't care who belonged to what party. I was a policy voter. And it took me a long time to realize that you're not voting for the person, you're voting for the political party that they represent. And you're voting for what that political party stands for. And so the history, it's very important to know the history of your political parties. The federal political parties are very different than the provincial political parties, and it's all dry and it's all very boring. But we need to get informed and we need to get involved. We have been conditioned to find our governance of our own country very boring, and we shouldn't know. It's not, just leave it up to them. They'll do it. And that's honestly what's gotten us to where we are today, is the fact that many, many generations have completely tapped out. They show up to vote, and that's it. That's the extent of their involvement. And how do they decide to vote? Well, they decide to vote by their favorite political party. That's it. They don't look at what that party's actually doing. They don't look at what it now represents. And political parties have changed a lot. If you go in at the federal level, if you take the time, and it's dry and it's boring, but if you take the time and go in and read the party constitution, each party has a constitution of their party that says what their party stands for, what their platforms are, all of that. If you go in and read the big three, because there's really only three that matter. If you go in and read the big three, NDP, Liberal, and the Conservative, you'll see just how close those constitutions are. It's almost impossible. If you were to only look at the words and take all the strip everything political party related out of it, you would swear they're all just minor versions of the same document. Why is that? When we're told they're so different. Ask yourself that. That's critical thinking, and that's applying, we should have discussions around that. We encourage you to go to our website, take a look at our donation page. When you donate, you get an ebook that we wrote that explains a lot of this. A lot of what's happened in our political history, a lot of why we're governed the way we are. It's not pretty, folks. It really isn't. But it's the history of Canada. It's not taught in schools. It's not. And if you don't have a desire to read history, you'll never. I never would have, had I not caught a desire to read history and to figure out, to help my son understand some questions that he was asking me, I never would have known. I would have been just going about my life, riding my motorcycle and just, living my life and not realized what's truly going on. And it's not pretty. Politicians are not our friends. I personally encourage you to get a book by Von Lyon called The PowerShift. It's from party elites to informed citizens. And it in it he describes very brilliantly our political system and our, he calls it partocracy. I can never pronounce that correctly, but that's what he calls all of that. And about how our democracy has been eroded to the point where it doesn't really even exist in parliament anymore, because you just have people that are entrenched in their political parties, and that's it. That's the political parties own the show. That's it. They have all the power, not the politicians. It's the political parties. So there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes in a political party that's not the politicians. So use those letters, because the first thing that we need to stop is any vaccine passports, any type of that. And you know what? I'm going to do a caveat here, because we've always sort of had, other countries have always asked for a travel vaccine, proof of travel vaccines. So, but it's always just been a letter. It hasn't been a passport of any kind. And it's only been if you're going to travel to that country, do you need to provide that proof? You've never had to provide it to come back into Canada as a Canadian citizen. It's always just been to go to specific countries, you need to provide that. And I think that's fair. I honestly do. We can't decide what other countries are going to do. It's been the norm for decades. So really that should be expected. But for us to have to carry a passport to come back into Canada as a Canadian citizen that states that you've got this, and when you do come back into Canada, you are segregated into different lines based on what your passport says, that is wrong. That happened in history, folks. And it's wrong. Just because it's not about our ancestry doesn't make it right. Think about that. As a society, the second that segregation comes into play, we have tried to extinguish segregation from our society for decades, and it is right back at the forefront. Just a little bit, it looks different. They put a different wrapper on it this time. Watch out for that, because that happens a lot. You'll see, you'll see a lot of things in the media where they're sort of fishing. It's about, oh, what do you think of this, or all of their little yes or no, you want this, you don't want this, those types of polls. They're fishing for public opinion, because we have become a world where politics is decided, where our lives, major decisions in our lives are decided on public opinion. And that is majority, that is collective voices, many voices saying one thing and the government running with it. And yet we're not having collective rights in our Constitution is a bad thing, because the majority will mob the minority. Well, that's happening already. The only problem is we have no way to stop it. We have no way, if we don't agree with public opinion, if we don't agree with, and I don't even say public opinion, but if we don't agree with what the government decides based on those polls, we don't get a voice in that. We don't get to vote on that. Why is that? 3/4 of what goes on in the 4 years, well, I said 3/4, probably 9/10 of what goes on in the 4 years in between elections is nothing you knew about when you were voting. It was never brought up. It was never discussed. It was never something that was on the table. And all of a sudden, once they're voted in, bills are being struck, acts are being changed, legislation's being removed, this is happening, more restrictions are happening. None of it was on the table when you were voting. When it's voting, it's all about promises and what we're going to do for you and how we're going to make your life better. And after voting, it's like, well, the public have spoken and they really want this. Did we speak? Or did a few of us speak for us? Anyway, that's sort of the gist for today. I've been going on for quite a bit here. We try, just so you're aware, we try to keep these videos a little bit longer so that people can come in and see and come and go and all of that. We find that when we do really short live videos, they don't get a whole lot of traction. Not a lot of people see them because they're not long enough. So just, if you find the videos long, I'm sorry. That's just how we need to do it for the algorithms, for the information to get out there. And the goal of all of this, as what we're doing, is to be seen and to have people understand. The chat in the comment section underneath all of our videos, we really like to see discussion. We moderate them quite heavily because that's the world we live in now. Not everything can fly in chats, or we will lose our ability to use the platform that the videos are on. So we're very, very careful. We're very, very so be careful what you say, be careful what you're sharing. If it's something that does go against the standards, it will be removed. We may not even be the ones to remove it. It may just automatically get reported and removed. So and we don't like that. We don't like when something gets reported and removed because it does put our channel in jeopardy. So please share, please like, please comment, get involved. Send out the letter. You can hand it out. You can email it. If you have a fax machine, you can fax it. One of the things we find with faxes is that the people at the other end may not actually have a fax machine anymore, but the number may still be published. So emailing and handing out in person, you can even mail it. Do you know what? If you can mail it to your MPs, all the MPs, Executive Council, Prime Minister, or Executive Council, Prime Minister, the Governor Generals, your Lieutenant Governors, all of that's free to mail to. You don't need to put a stamp on the letters. Just know their address, put it in the mail, and it will get to them for free. It's not the same for provincial governments, though. Provincial governments, sadly, you need to put a stamp on it. But if you live close to your parliament, you can drop them off there. If you live close to your constituent's office, like your riding area. So federal will have a federal office and provincial will have a provincial office. Get to know them. Don't be rude. That's the other thing too. Do not be rude when you're handing these out at all. Just sort of hand them out and say, here, just some information for you regarding your individual rights to privacy and your individual right for medical choice. Here you go. And feel free to read it, and please pass it on to your manager. Please pass it on to the head of your corporation, your HR department in your corporation. The other place that you'd want to send this to is the privacy commissioners and ombudsman of your province, your unions, your union rep. If your union rep laughs at you, go above their head and go to the upper union representative, or you can even just send it to your union head office. Your union should be working for you on this stuff, not against you. And again, your union is supposed to do what you wish, not the other way around. People, we've become a world where unions call the shots, but really the employees are supposed to call the shots. And that's the other thing too I want to address, is that the Canadian People's Union is not a labor union. It has nothing to do with labor, has nothing to do with unions in the workplace. It is about our collective political and civil rights as every Canadian and Indigenous person in this country, as the people of Canada. That's what it's about. So it's about those rights, not not workplace rights. So we get that asked a lot. Oh, I'd never do that. You're a union. Well, we're not that kind of union. We're actually we're a union you want to get involved with, because it is about your rights as a citizen, as a Indigenous person, as a person that lives in Canada. That it's about your political and civil collective rights, and to some degree individual rights as well, because our individual rights are being stripped away faster than we can blink. A lot of them may not come back. A lot of them are on the way to, again, these little tiny steps that they're taking now aren't necessarily leading to a good place. There's other, if you look at other countries, some other countries are a bit ahead of us on this, and it's not very good. Okay, I'm going to leave you with this for now. Again, thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for being a part of this with us. We encourage everybody to get involved as much as you can. You don't need to be public about it. You don't need to be videotaping everything. You don't need to be going on lives or anything like that. You can do whatever you wish. Just one last thing. We keep getting asked if people are going to be mandated to have to do things, why is this happening? When is this going to happen? You know what? We honestly don't know, but the writing's on the wall, isn't it? If you're asking that question, why are you asking that question? You know the answer. We don't need to answer it for you. And if you don't want to see it happening, you know what to do. That's basically it. If you don't want to see the result of the question that you're asking, because you know the answer, that's why you're asking it, you know what to do. If you're in a situation where your individual rights are being stomped on right now, there's a few things you need to do. You need to get to the privacy commissioner. You need to get to your ombudsman. You need to get to your human rights commissioner, and you need to get to your labor board and your union. If you have a labor union, if you work in a business that has a union, that's what you need to do. They will advise you of what you can and cannot do, and they will open a file for you. You also need to get your doctor on board. And if you don't have a doctor that's on board, as hard as it is to find doctors in Canada in certain areas, it's impossible to find doctors taking on new patients. You may need to start looking around for a doctor that is on board with a lot of this stuff. Or that at least is open-minded to protect your health. So everything is really literally in the palm. I'm sorry, I've got a wrist issue in this hand. The palm of your hand. Everything is in your hand to do. Just need to take that leap and start doing it. And you don't need to be a radical about it. You don't need to be out there and have your family going, whoa, you just sort of bit off the wrong biscuit. You need to just, it's we have become so polarized when it comes to different opinions, and that's just what they are, is opinions. But when someone comes to you complaining about certain things, to say, are you ready to use a solution, or are you just wanting to keep complaining? Because that's really what it comes down to, is a lot of people just complain to complain. They don't want a solution. They're never going to take action on their own. And as long as you know that with certain people, then that's fine. Never ever offer them solution, because it's just like beating your head against a wall. It takes a long time now for people to understand something that's different or new. You may understand it right away because you were ready to. If someone's not ready to, it takes a while for them to come around. And it's usually not until something in their own life is causing them enough pain for them to have to wake up and take notice. It all comes down to what touches our personal lives. If it's not touching our personal lives in a way that we don't like, then we don't pay attention. That is something we should be working on changing in our society, because we should be working as a whole. All of us should be working together, regardless of 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 what your beliefs are when it comes to some of the medical interventions that are out there right now. We all should be working together, because we are all, the only people that aren't in this boat with us are the elite oligarchs, and I keep using that word oligarch, but that's really what they are. These are the multi wealthy. They're not in the same boat as us. 3/4 of our politicians, we shouldn't say 3/4, almost all of our politicians are not in the same boat as us. People get into politics to become wealthy, folks. They originally get into it because they want to make a difference sometimes, but for the most part, a lot of them are in it because they know that's where the money is. And not necessarily in as being a politician, but the connections that they make, that's why they're there. It's not about us. We're a byproduct of our concerns, and our lives are a byproduct of why they're really there. And we gladly put them there. It's a strange, strange process. And maybe that needs to be revisited too at some point. Maybe not in our lifetimes, but we at least need to make sure that our children have the freedom and the ability, and future generations. They always say, in your lifetime, look back at 7 generations past, is where you're at, is why you're at to where you are today. And if and any change you make, or any ripples you create, go 7 generations into the future. So think about that. What we're doing today has the potential to affect 7 generations. Do you want it to be for good, so that they have choice and freedom, or do you want them locked down for their lives and not able to move, and unless they behave in certain ways or do certain things, or um, you know become 100% compliant all the time? It really is us today, in this world, in this reality, that needs to look in the mirror and say, is this something that I would want my child to live with their whole life? And their children, knowing that things will get progressively tighter and worse. Taxes were never supposed to be like this. Other things were never supposed to be like this. Use that as your template for how this will escalate, because it will. Anything the government touches in this manner, that's what happens with it. Problem, solution. They create the problem, they give us a solution, we lose a little bit more. That just seems to be the routine. the circle. Okay, I'm out of here. I've got to get my son up and out to work. So you guys have a great day, and I will see you tomorrow morning. Bye.